Hello, and you are listening to the On Balance podcast. My name is Lương Ngọc Tiên. I am the host of the show. We bring you stories and wisdom from the East and the West in order to help you find more balance, well-being, and inspirations for life. And today, we're very delighted to introduce our special guest to you, Dr. Hà Vĩnh Thọ. Dr. Hà Vĩnh Thọ is the chairman of Eurasia Foundation, founder of Eurasia Learning Institute. He is a well-known international speaker on cross-national happiness, an author of the book called Happiness is the Way, which has already been translated into Vietnamese, Hạnh phúc là con đường. In this book, he shares his life journeys and the many applications of cross-national happiness in organization, in education, and in other practical areas of our life, which is our self-development and family. So in today's conversation, we will have a chance to learn from him what has been important in his life, what has created his life journey into discovering happiness and find ways to inspire and educate a lot of people, organizations, including leaders and teachers, and even the youngsters, to look for happiness in themselves so that they can create happiness for others and also for our planet. Welcome, Dr. Thọ, to our talk today. Welcome, Thầy. It is such a great honor for me, myself, and on the rest of our team here, and also on the audience who will be listening to our podcast, to have you with us today. So thank you so much for making your time, first of all.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure.
Yes. So we will go straight into having the conversation with you. And for us, we know that in the past 2 years, you haven't returned to Vietnam. How was your feeling? How is it coming back this time, Thầy?
I'm really happy to be back. And actually, the other side to it is that I really enjoyed having over 2 years without traveling. So I've been traveling a lot, all the time. And then for over 2 years, I was just quiet in one place. Actually, it was very pleasant, so quiet and, a slow rhythm and really coming back to myself. So actually, I enjoyed it. Although I'm aware many people were suffering and I felt a lot of compassion for that. But for me personally, it was actually a very fruitful time. I wrote books, I meditated a lot, and it was, actually a good time. But then I was also missing my friends in Vietnam so much. And so coming back is very, very joyous. So it's a very good time to be back.
When I look at you when we met after you returned, seeing you in such good health and also good spirit, it almost like you bring joy to us, not the other way around. And I myself feel very grateful because of that. And I know that during the COVID time, you also deliver a lot of webinars and talks, and you write books, and you said that you had time off, but in fact, you have never been actually off because of that. So there are so many things and so many stories, and a lot of people in the world have known about your story and your journey. But in Vietnam, we haven't been that much exposed to the whole journey of your life, which is, I think, is very, very meaningful. So let us begin with your life story. Can you start by sharing with us what happened when you were at the age of 18?
Yes, well, the beginning actually is, of course, obviously much further back than when I was 18, because it begins with the fact that my father was Vietnamese and my mother French. So I grew up like in two worlds, in two cultures, with two different heritage. And that was quite significant in becoming who I am, like feeling that I'm at home in the world. I don't belong to one country, I belong to the world, because from the beginning I was, being exposed to both Western and Eastern Vietnamese culture. But maybe quite an important turning point had two dimensions. One was that when I was 17, 18, in Europe, and actually in many countries around the world, was the time of the student revolution. And many young people got very active socially, politically, and I was also very engaged. At the time, the war was raging in Vietnam, and because My father was from Vietnam. I had family in Vietnam. I felt very committed, or it touched me very much. At that time, I was in France, in Paris. And it was the time where there were the negotiation in Paris between, South and North Vietnam and so on. And there was a lot of student demonstration, and I was very involved in that, trying to advocate for peace at the time. Then I was part of the whole student revolution movement. That was quite significant because it awoke a social awareness, political awareness in me. And at the same time, I felt a little bit disappointed because I felt that we could not really get through with our ideals to make the society more just, more human, and so on. And so I was a little bit lost. What do you do? If the political action doesn't really work, how can you contribute? Then at that time, more or less during the same period, my father was going back to Vietnam. That was in 1969, and I was supposed to go with him. But 1969, the war was really at its height. There had been the Tet Offensive in '68, and it was very difficult time in Vietnam. And my father told me, you should not go back. I had a Vietnamese citizenship, so if I go in as a young man, I would probably not be allowed to go out anymore. And my father told me, maybe it's better you don't come with me to Vietnam. So I went with him to Bangkok. And then when he went to Vietnam, I went back, and actually I went first to India and then to Nepal. And during my stay and at that time, I was more socially and politically engaged, and not so much spiritually or religiously inclined. It was my awareness was more social, political. And then when I was in Nepal, I went for a trek in the mountains, in the Himalayas. And in these days, in the Himalayas, there was no tourist, no trekking company, nothing. I just went with a few friends, and we just went off. It was a pilgrimage, actually. And, well, to cut a long story short, I got separated from my friends during this pilgrimage, and I ended up being alone. And I got lost in the mountain. And I really thought I would die. Because I was alone, lost in the mountain, no idea where to go, what to do, no maps, nothing, And I thought, okay, that's the end of it. And I was 18, and it was like very scary. I mean, it's like, and I went through all kind of turmoil inwardly, that I was afraid, I was feeling sorry for myself, then I got really angry, many very negative emotions, and, and not knowing what to do, feeling completely helpless, and so on. And at a certain point, there was inwardly, there was kind of a breakthrough. And I didn't know how it came about. But suddenly, from feeling fear and anxiety and anger, and this all dropped. And I felt completely peaceful. And until then, the mountain had felt like it was menacing, it was dangerous. It was like, I'm so small and nature is so big and it's going to kill me or something. And suddenly I felt like I'm one with nature, I'm one with the universe, I'm one with the planet. A feeling of unity and of peace and a very deep happiness. And that was an amazing experience because I suddenly discovered an inner dimension that I was not aware of. So anyway, after that, somehow actually a lama, a monk, passed by and he found me, brought me to a village. And obviously I survived, otherwise I wouldn't be here. But then this experience was very powerful for me. And I was asking myself, so it happened. It was, today one calls that near-death experience, where you come near death and then another dimension opens. But I didn't do anything for it. It just happened. And then my question was, is it possible to create this consciously? Is there a path that leads me to experience this kind of oneness and peace and happiness that is completely independent from outer events? Because the outer events were terrible. I was, about to die. But inwardly, it was marvelous. The most the happiest moment in my life, in a way, you know. And so that led me to getting interested in meditation and Buddhism. So I had my first meditation teacher there in Nepal. He was a Tibetan Lama. So I started really seriously getting involved with meditation and inner transformation to try to understand, you know, from within what was the path that could lead to these experiences. So that was the one side. And the other side is, so at one point I asked myself, should I become a monk and, you know, or a hermit and just like meditate all the time?
Already when around that age?
Yeah, when I was 18, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It was such an intriguing experience, Thầy. And obviously you didn't decide to become a monk. What happened after that?
Yes. Well, that was really a very interesting moment in my life, because I had the question, is it either or? I mean, is it either you really focus on spiritual life, then you have to give up like worldly life, like career, family, job, and so on, or if you focus on having a social life, you know, having a family, having a worldly life, does it mean that you cannot have a real serious spiritual life? So that was a question that I was really, struggling with. And so I decided to go back to Europe, and I really decided I want to try to have both. I don't want to choose, because I think both are important, because there's two sides to it. One is, as I said, I was feeling very engaged socially, politically, and I felt it was important to continue to try to do something for society. That was the one side. The other side was I had discovered this inner dimension, and I wanted to continue to cultivate that. And so my question is, how can I balance the two? That was the one side. And then the personal side was that when I was 18, I already had a girlfriend. And
18?
Yeah, I had her before that.
Everything happened in your life at a very, very young age. Then.
Yeah, it seems, yeah. And actually, I loved her very much, and I really wanted to spend my life with her, which happened to be the reality because we are still married today. You know? So that's more than 50 years ago, that what I'm speaking about. And so there was, like if you want, like value-based choice that I want to try to combine these two elements. And there was a personal choice that I felt, yes, actually, I want to have a family life. I want to have children. I want to have, I went back and then I started studying, and then my question was, what are the fields where I can combine these two things? So I was thinking would be either medical studies, it was either in health, because then you are contributing, for society, or education, because in education you are preparing the next generation. And so finally I decided to combine the both, because I worked in the field of education, but mostly with children with disability, and so it was like education and health together. So for many years then I was working in the field of special education, and then training teachers who want to work in the field of special education. It was also an effort to have experiences where we try to live in a different way. So I lived in a Camp Hill community. So here in Vietnam, we have also created a Camp Hill community in Hue, the peaceful bamboo family. And there the idea is to try to, in a small scale, to crowd like a social experiment. Is it possible to live in a different way together? That is more based on compassion, solidarity, kindness, and not so much on competition, money, power, and so on. So that the seeds were already planted when I was very young.
Mm. So Thầy mentioned that from that decisions to combine the two dimensions of life, and Thầy really want to experience it and to be able to live that for your own, took you to the decision of getting married and then choosing the career that you will follow, which is education. And then even in that, you also want to again combine
exactly
the way of living that is more in harmony with your values. I have a question here. Have you ever been in doubt about all the decisions that you have made, Thầy? Because it seems that the concerns the struggles, the thoughts that you have are very deep thoughts, and they don't have a concrete answers even today. So back then, when you were really, really young, and then you had to make one big decisions after another, what about those doubtful moments? That how did you overcome, or what helped you?
I never really had doubts about my values or about my goals or about what I'm trying to reach. But of course, in the reality of daily life, I've had doubts about, am I able to do it? Is the situation, possible? What are the obstacles? And many different obstacles. Like, we were very young when we got married. So when I came back, we got married, and we had our first child when I was 20. So I was very young. I didn't have a career yet. I was still studying. We had very little money. So, they were like just practical life. How do you deal with these things? And then you find solutions. But it was never a doubt about, is the direction the right one? That was very clear. That's what I want to do. And there was no doubt about that. The doubt was about, am I able to create those conditions that make it possible for me to actually embody these things and to manifest it? Sometimes it works, sometimes not so well, and so on. Yet, but the overall intention was very clear from the beginning, and I never really doubted about that.
Even that is impressive. Is like, because even you said you're not doubtful about the values or the intention or the goal or the purpose. I'm still curious. How did you become like that? Was that already in your made up, like you was born that way, or you grow up that way? Is your personality you inherited from your father? What is it in you that make you very strongly, stand for the values or what you believe in life?
I think there are many different factors, and it's not easy to really, differentiate what comes from what. But basically, and that's true for everyone, you have first you have heredity. You have what is passed through past generation, what you receive through past generation, which is like heredity, your biological setup, so to say, right? And that's one thing. Then the other thing is the environment in which you grow up, which like the relationship in the family and so forth. I must say what I'm really grateful for is that my parents, they didn't always understand my choices. And sometimes my father was a bit worried about why am I not pursuing a normal good career, like where I can earn and, have a good position. But at the same time, he always had the confidence. He had a lot of confidence in me. And when I explained to him why I was doing what I was doing, he would accept and support it, And my mother, anyway, for my mother, the only question is, are you happy? That's all she wants to know. She didn't care, like, do I have a big position? Or for her, it was totally unimportant. But are you happy? Is it good with your wife? Are you happy with your children? If I said yes, and for her, everything was okay. So that was supportive. So, there was supportive, that the family was very kind and very loving. So that helps, of course. Then, beyond heredity and environment, I believe each one of us comes with his own being, like a spiritual impulse. So you cannot reduce the reality of a person to heredity and environment. Because, like, if you have, for instance, several children in the same family, they have the same heredity, they have the same environment, and they can grow up to become very different people. Because we are not only a product of environment and heredity. We come with our own spiritual being, so to say. And then it's how do we find the balance between what we receive from our parents, from society, and what lives in us in a kind of an impulse. And for me, this inner dimension was always very strong, that I had the feeling, I want to go in a certain direction. I will not just be influenced by what society expects or social norms were not important for me. I wanted to live my life, not the life that society wants me to live.
Is that the way, if one person become convincing about their own calling, and then they should gather on the strength and on the knowledge that they know about themselves and follow that path to really become who they believe they should be, Thầy?
I think it's the only way to have a fulfilled life. You know, as long as you just answer outer expectations, it's not you. So if you want to have to fulfill life, you have to follow what you really deeply believe in and what you think is the right thing to do, you know. And of course you have to take into account the reality of society and so on. It's not that you are alone because we are dependent on all these things, but, you know, where do you put the emphasis? That's the one thing. The other side is it needs cultivation, you know. So it's not something that just comes from nothing. And as I said, you know, when I was 18, I had the first encounter with a spiritual path. Then when I came back to Europe, I met then with anthroposophy, which is like a European spiritual tradition. And I also practiced and learned that, role of Steiner, you know, Steiner education, biodynamic agriculture, all comes from this tradition. And then later I also met with the Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh, who became my teacher. And all through my life, what has been the red thread is that I have a very disciplined spiritual life. You know, so it's not just, it's there, but I cultivate it in a very, very regular manner. So there's not one day passing by where I don't meditate, for instance. I'm really very rigorous with my inner discipline. So these things, it's not that they simply happen. They happen because you make them happen, because you cultivate something, and then it can manifest.
So Thầy ơi, looking back on this whole process, after your self-awakening and many other choices that you have made, what would you say would be your most important or your insights that you take away after all that process that you have been through?
I think one very important dimension of my life was actually having a family. So, because I consider that relationship is a very central part to also inner development. And my relationship with my wife, and then with my children, and so on, you know, with my friends. So it's really the relational dimension is very central, and it really puts your ideals to the test of reality. You know, like if you meditate and think, oh, I love the whole world, it's sort of easy. Right? But on a daily basis with the person in front of you and with the kids and so on, you know, and the challenges of work and so on, can you live up to it? Or is it just like ideals, you know, to say, oh yeah, like compassion or kindness or gratitude? Or are you actually able to live it on a daily basis when you are confronting with the, you know, the unescapable challenges of daily life? So I think that was a very interesting part to see. So there's the inner dimension that you can do for yourself, like meditation, exercising, and so on. But then there's a relational dimension. And then, as I mentioned, we lived in a community for many years. And community life is extremely challenging and extremely important. Because as long as relationships are a little bit distant, it's easy, you know, you can be nice and then you go away. But if you live together with people, you cannot hide your dark sides or your weaknesses because they know you, you know, absolutely. Every day you are together, so you cannot hide anything, you know. And so you have to really transform. You cannot pretend, you know. So that's another very important thing. For me, it was also how can I be in service, because basically spirituality has two components. One is wisdom, and the other one is compassion. So wisdom you can cultivate within. But compassion you cannot cultivate within, because compassion is not just an emotion. Compassion is what you actually do to help others. How do you actually contribute to society? So being aware of the needs of the world and trying to do your best to try to bring something positive in the world is for me as much part of my spiritual path as meditating or learning or developing my inner self. So it's for me really this balance between cultivating inwardly and really being in service in the world. So these were my two guidelines. And so it led me through different phases, like first I did it in special education with children with disabilities. Later I joined the International Committee of the Red Cross, which is the part of the Red Cross movement that works in war zones. So I was a lot in war zones and conflict areas. I saw a lot of suffering, refugees and wounded people in wars. And, you might think that's very depressing, but actually it's also a great opportunity to be of service and to realize that even in the worst situation, you see people doing amazing things. Not being destroyed by the hardship, but becoming their better selves in the face of hardship. And I think here in Vietnam, many people experience that, like the war was very long, very painful. A lot of people suffered, but also a lot of people were heroes and, could grow beyond themselves, were ready to do things that we usually don't do. Being able to sacrifice yourself for something higher than yourself, which is very profound, very impressive, So the Red Cross was a very important experience for me to really witness firsthand what real deep suffering is. And actually this is what led me to get so interested in happiness. Because true happiness is not looking away from suffering. It's being aware of suffering and being willing to transform suffering.
So up until this point, thầy arrived at the concept of happiness, and thầy is also trying to solve the puzzle of how to bring about happiness into life. I wonder if it will be related to the material world that we are living today, because I realize that when we talk about happiness, we tend to relate happiness to success. And when we talk about success, we tend to relate success to materialism. The most of people, when they follow this path, they tend to end up being very stressful, out of balance, having problems with their health and relationship in their life. So it seems like there is something wrong in this whole pursuit of success and happiness that a lot of us are facing. Is there a way out?
First of all, I think we are in a transition period of humanity. Because actually, the world that we have created in the past, let's say, 50, 60, 80 years, since the end of the Second World War, so the whole development was towards economic growth and creating a certain material stability, which is important, obviously. And especially in a country like Vietnam, during the war, the country has been really destroyed. So at the end of the war, of course, the first task was to rebuild the country, build the economy, build the infrastructure. And of course, it was normal that people, also young people, would put their intention and their effort in contributing to rebuilding also the economy of the country. Obviously, it's very important. So there's nothing wrong about that. But actually, this kind of society that is built on consumption, more production, more material well-being and so on, is coming to an end. For several reasons. The first one is ecological reason. The way we have been abusing and destroying the planet in the past 100 years is not sustainable. If we don't change our ways, there will be no future. Because we are destroying this planet. So we cannot just say, okay, let's continue to do the same. It's not possible. The second thing is, as long as you, for instance, you really are very poor and you're not sure if you can satisfy your basic needs, of course you need to create a situation where you feel secure that you have enough to eat and you have a roof and so on. It's nothing wrong with that. It's absolutely natural. But once you reach that, you realize, and now what? Because that's not the purpose of life. It's the basis. Yes, of course, you need to have that in order to be able to live your life. But if you stay with that, you get very bored after a while. And so I experience also here in Vietnam many, middle-aged people, or like not very young, but maybe in their 30s or 40s. They've made it. They have a good career. They have a good job. They earn enough money. But they also feel it's not enough. It doesn't fulfill the life. Just, so next telephone, next car, so after, once you've tried, 3 or 4 telephones, 3 or 4 cars, then a new car, new telephone doesn't bring any satisfaction anymore. It's just very boring. It's just same old, So what will bring meaning to life? And material values alone don't give meaning to life, you see. Then now we had the pandemic, and we saw that the pandemic is not just a random accident. The pandemic is a consequence of the way we've been living, because it has to do with ecological destruction that made that the wildlife doesn't have a home anymore. And then, these viruses that jump from animals to humans and then create this kind of, pandemics. And that it's the beginning, it's not the end. It's the beginning. So, and now there's the war in Ukraine, and there's a big problem with oil, oil and even food. So we see the world that we thought was very stable, now we can just continue doing the same. It's not the case. So we need to reinvent the way we live. We need to reinvent society. We are in a transition point. And for me, the question is, will enough people wake up and realize we need to change something radically, inwardly and outwardly, for the future to be possible? If not, we are going towards very big catastrophes. And as human beings who have 2 ways of learning, either we learn through wisdom, through compassion, through our growing, through our awakening, or we learn through suffering. So if people don't wake up, we will have more and more suffering, more and more catastrophes, until we wake up. So for me, to prevent that, to prevent suffering, because if our intention is compassion, then compassion means we want to alleviate suffering. We should not allow unnecessary suffering. If we want to prevent that, we need to educate the next generation in such a way that they are aware of the challenges and they are equipped to face these challenges. And it is possible. We can do it.
I think the pandemic is positive in the sense that the suffering brings awakening to many people, and even we don't have to explain to children what unhappiness is about. They would say unhappiness is when I have to stay home and I cannot go to school and I cannot meet up with my friends. So even the younger ones understand what unhappiness is about. But the road to happiness, the road to self-awakening is not just self-realizing, like Thầy said, that you need to awaken to the situation that we are in. But I think it has a lot to do with their own understanding or association with the word happiness in itself. Because if they don't know how to create that condition for themselves, it's very difficult for them to create that conditions for the surroundings and for other people. Yeah. So making war is easier because when you get angry with your neighbors, already you're making a war. But if you need to make peace with that person, like make that person be friend with that person, understand that person, is maybe a longer process. So in that sense, how could we deal with a moment of unhappiness in our life? And is there a way for us to really establish this condition, first of all, for ourselves, Thầy?
I think to answer this question, we have to clarify what we mean by happiness. Because even when you were describing yourself, that you said, you wanted to establish a career and, establish a certain foundation, be interdependent. So what were you looking for? You were looking for happiness. We are all striving for happiness. So it's a fundamental human aspiration. Every single person wants to be happy. Every single person wants to avoid suffering. And we also want our loved ones to be happy and so on. So happiness is innate. You don't have to convince people that they should try to be happy. It's very natural for all of us to want to be happy. The problem is, oftentimes we don't understand clearly what happiness truly is. And we look for happiness in the wrong place, creating more unhappiness than happiness. The first thing is we have to have a clear distinction between superficial pleasure and true happiness. So nothing wrong with superficial pleasure. I'm not advocating against pleasure. Pleasure is fine. But pleasure is short-lived. It cannot last. It's very personal, very subjective. You know, you might like this food, I might like another food. And that's the way it is. You know, we have different tastes, and that's fine. I should not try to convince you you should eat what I like. You should eat what you like. Yeah? So in every field like that, pleasure is very subjective. Pleasure is very short-lived. You cannot keep it. So if we mistake pursuit of pleasure with pursuit of happiness, we have a problem. And consumption is typically pursuing pleasure, not happiness. So I want to have more things.
And making it convenient also, because if you don't like this food, I would suggest you that food. If you cannot think, I would give you like 10 top bestseller recommendation. Even make it more convenient for us to get pleasure. Pleasure is fast.
Exactly.
Convenient.
But it doesn't last. And so looking for pleasure and for happiness in the material field becomes like an addiction. You need to have always more, always faster. Otherwise, you know, the satisfaction disappears very fast. Yeah, if we get back the, I don't know, the new iPhone has come out, was it 13 or whatever the number it is? So maybe you already had 1, 2, 3, 4. Then if it's already your 10th different new model that you have, then for a few days you're quite happy. Oh, I got a new phone. Everybody, look, man, 3 cameras, whatever, you know. After a week, it's just a phone. I mean, you know, nothing special, you know. So the satisfaction is very short-lived, very short-lived. True happiness is something completely different. True happiness has a threefold foundation. The first one is to be able to live in harmony with oneself. In order to live in harmony with oneself, we have to understand ourselves. It's about self-knowledge and self-cultivation. So we spoke already about mindfulness and meditation. And so, do I really know who I am? Do I know what my values are? If I don't, how can I live in harmony with my values if I don't even know what they are? So really, you know, taking time to look inwardly and know ourselves, and then trying to adjust our life with our highest aspiration, with our values, what really matters. So living in harmony with oneself is the first condition. And that's not depending on anything external. And if we don't have that, this feeling that we align with ourselves, then we try to find satisfaction outside. And it doesn't really work. Because we, first of all, have to find ourselves. That's the first one. The second one is living in harmony with others. Because, as I mentioned before, the quality of human relationship is the foundation, one of the very important foundation of happiness and well-being. Meaning friendship and love. You know, if we don't have strong, trustful, warm relationship with the people around us, being it family or friends or colleagues, never mind, but people, so that we feel we are part of a social fabric, we're part of a community. There's love and trust and confidence and support and generosity and gratitude. If we don't have that, we cannot have a happy life. So I think we should invest much more time in relationship and less time in consumption. Because relationships, they last. If they are good, they last. And if I go through a difficult situation, then, and my friends are here for me, you know, that really helps. Things are not here for me. You know, I can be a millionaire and have so many houses and
without
property,
but
if nobody is there for me, I just have servants, but I don't have friends, you know. That's the second one. So living in harmony with others. And the third one is, and it has become more and more important, is living in harmony with nature. Because we have been destroying nature, you know. And in order to live in harmony with nature, we have to awaken to the reality that the planet Earth is not a thing, it's a being. It's our mother. So destroying our planet is like killing our mother. Killing our own mother is the worst thing a human being can do. Killing his own mother. How can you do that? You know? But that's what we're doing. You know? So we have to wake up to the fact that the planet Earth is our mother. We are her children. And because we are the children, every single human being is my sister and my brother. Like my blood brother, my blood sister, we are children of the same parents.
Yes.
All 7 billion human beings, we are the children of the same mother. And we have to feel this responsibility, this care. If somebody is suffering in Ukraine, it means something to me. If a child is dying in Africa, it means something to me, because we are all brothers and sisters.
I really feel deeply, deeply connected to what they just shared. And at the same time, I don't know if it's also similar to the people who are hearing our talk. It also seems a little far from the reality that we are living in. Far in the sense that, like, I am aware of, I need to start with myself. I need to build relationship around myself, and also to take care of the environment of nature, and also start to have this sense of interconnectedness. But I'm really suffering. I'm not strong enough. I feel like if I'm a person who at this point of time is struggling with my career, is having an unhappy family relationship. Maybe I was born into a family where there are a lot of issues with my relatives and with a lot of people all around me. Everywhere I look are problems and issues that even I myself, if I want to do something on my own, I don't have that freedom. And maybe what I'm saying is just the reality of many people combined at the same time. May not be one person. That's first thing. And the second thing, I always have this sense that when what we have been doing to our society, to ourselves, and to the environment is a really like heavy, heavy past. That if we want to get out of it, it's also take a lot of force and effort and even support and togetherness that we don't get from the top. The people who are leading us in this society or in the economy, for example. So I feel a little bit like how if I do this and I'm awakened by myself, then I would step out of what I'm doing, and then I would start what? I would start taking care of myself and building relationship with one person. Does it work that way, Thầy? Or do we need even a bigger awakening collectively so that what Thầy is sharing can become step that we take deliberately together into the future? Because what we're facing right now is still stress issue, depression issue, problems in our families, problem at school, situation at jobs where work life is still unbalanced or not, like that. Things like that, Thầy. We do want to care about other people, but we feel like we lack the resources, we lack the freedom, we lack the power in order to do that. I'm giving you a lot of issues that I just feel like are overwhelming a person or maybe a group of people or even a small community who really want to do it right. How do we take step?
So, you have just mentioned various experiences of suffering. And suffering is universal. It's not that, here there's more suffering than somewhere else or something. Suffering is part of human condition. So if you think you can only start when suffering has disappeared, you will never start, because suffering is part of human condition, and it manifests in many forms. So it can be, like problems in the family, or it can be a war or a famine. But it's all suffering. It's not fundamentally different. The inner experience of suffering is suffering. What the cause is might be different, but the experience of suffering is fundamentally the same. And suffering is the very foundation, the very soil on which we can develop happiness. If there was no suffering, we could not develop happiness. Why? Because suffering is what makes compassion possible. What the word compassion means, to suffer with.
Compassion means to suffer with.
To suffer with, yeah. Passion is Latin for suffering, and con means with, together. So suffering together, compassion. Yeah. So suffering is not the problem. Suffering becomes the problem if it overwhelms you, if you identify with it. But suffering is human condition. But this human condition is also the soil for awakening. So it's not that, okay, let me solve all the problems, then I can start doing something meaningful. It's not like that. It's like the difficulties that you're encountering are the opportunities that you have to transform. And each one of us have very specific ones. What is my suffering? Is it with my family? Is it with my job? Is it a financial one? Is it a health issue? Is it a political one? Many different forms. But if we learn to see that the suffering that we're encountering, the problems that we personally encountering are exactly the stepping stone, the leverage point that allows transformation. So we should not try to look away or pretend it's not there, or or we should acknowledge it and see it. That's where I can begin transformation. That's the first thing. So it's not, what you say is very nice, but the reality is people are suffering. Of course the people are suffering, and that's exactly why we need to transform, The second thing is that we tend to blame the system. Like, we have a bad political system, we have a bad economic system, I have a bad company, I have a bad school, whatever. So we project the problem outside. Systems are not like independent entities that live somewhere in the cosmos. Systems are the product of the way I think, I feel, I act, I relate. So we are at any given moment co-creating the system in which we live. Therefore, we are co-responsible for the system, which is a burden, but it's an opportunity, because if I co-create this system, I can transform it. So it's really in a shift from being a victim. The problems are there and I'm a victim, oh poor me, because people are not nice, I never find the right partner, my boss is horrible, whatever, my parents are not kind, and I'm a victim. To shift that to, I am part of the reality that I'm living in, and I'm co-creating this reality. If I transform myself, I transform the reality in which I live. And all of us can start here and now. You don't have to wait for a specific something that happens, then I can start. We can all start here and now, because transforming our consciousness is available here and now. And the second thing is, we cannot do it alone. We need to do it together. So creating communities of like-minded, like-hearted people, networks of people who share same intentions, same values, very, very important. Community building is very, very important if we want to strive towards this kind of collective awakening.
When they mention about community, having people with like-minded and like-hearted way of living together, it reminds me of the right livelihood, one part of the 8 wheels that they used to share. And I wonder, how do we create this condition of right livelihood and trying to solve the practical issues of life, like how much money should we earn so that we can sustain ourselves, so that we can start building this right livelihood for ourselves. In other words, my question would be, what should we think about money or means, ways of earning a living, and then solve that so that we can create a right livelihood and be with people who...
For many years, together with my family, we lived in a community. I mentioned the Campbell community, and there we had a very radical way to solve that, is that we didn't have any personal income. All the money that was coming in the community through the work we were doing, because we had a community that was taking care of children with disabilities, so we are giving a service to society, and all the money that would come in one common fund. We didn't have a personal salary. So all the money came in one fund. We were a community of more than 100 people living together. And so we took what we needed, but nothing belonged to us. It's not, like the modern way of thinking is that this is my property, this is my money, I do what I want with it, it's like it belongs to me. And it's so ingrained in our way of thinking that it's very difficult to see it, have a relationship with money that is different than that. We always think we work in order to earn money, and the money that we earn through our work belongs to us. And I would like to challenge that. First thing, we don't work for money. We work to offer our contribution to society. That's why we work. We work in order to manifest our gifts, our talents, what we can contribute. That's why we work. Ideally, right? That's the true motivation of work, is I work because through my work I offer something to society, and I also unfold myself. I contribute my unique talents, no matter what it is. So then, of course, I need to sustain myself. I need to eat, I need to have food, I need to have clothes, so I need to be taken care of. And normally, in our societies, I work and I have to take care of myself. And if I don't, nobody is going to take care of me.
That's true.
So it's very difficult. In a community, you can solve it in a different way. For us, it was like that. Every one of us worked hard, working hard, but not for money, to help, in this case, disabled children. And each one received what they needed, and it was not dependent on their job. So, for instance, the medical doctor didn't earn more than the gardener, because both of them earned nothing. The money just came in, and whatever the doctor needed, he took. Whatever the gardener needed, he took. And so when I say that, people think it's possible, that cannot work. It worked very well for many years. And we were never losing money. We never were in financial problems. Because in life, your needs, they vary. It's not that you need more and more and more and more and more. That's the way we think. Oh, I need to earn more and more. But it's not true. Like when my kids were small, I did not need that much. When they start going to school and were teenagers, I needed more. Then they went to university, I needed more. Then my kids went away from home, I have their own job. I need less now than I needed 20 years ago. But normally in a career you earn more, except if your career fails. But it's not that your needs are more. So can we really adjust more between the real needs and the financial, income? And this cannot be done alone. And that's where new experiments in right livelihood are very, very interesting. And as I told you, we've experienced that for many decades. And it's possible. People think, no, it's not possible. It's completely, like it's a dream. It's not. But it needs people who are willing to try to do it together. And I think it's really possible. It's a very interesting experience.
Thanks, Thầy, a lot, because the more Thầy answer my questions and make it larger through your life experiences, the more I realize that it's not important that the challenge we're facing now or Thầy was facing then is more about Thei's attitude to take it and to try to solve it in a way that is very much based on the values that Thầy had. And Thầy never changed that. So I think it doesn't matter what challenge now, no matter how do I have the attitude of doing like Thầy have done for your life. So I really want Thầy to help us with realizing ourselves, building the self or relying on ourselves, the self-knowledge that Thầy mentioned about. How do we make it strong? How do we nurture it? How do we cultivate all of the good virtues that are inside us, and also take care of the virtues that needs to be taken care of, so that when we face difficulty, challenges, on the rest of what future will bring, we'll face it with this heart and this wisdom that Thầy has been sharing from the beginning to now.
So what is the question?
The question is, how do I educate myself?
Okay. So I think it's important to keep in mind these three components of true happiness that I mentioned. So, being aligned with oneself, living in harmony with self, living in harmony with others, and living in harmony with our planet, with nature. So that can guide you to see what has to be done. So the first one is living in harmony with oneself. The basic tool is mindfulness and meditation. So it's about slowing down and stopping and looking inward and observing, understanding our own mind, how our own mind functions. Because usually we use our mind to understand the world, but we don't understand how our mind is working. So it's really this looking inwardly. So mindfulness and meditation are really a very strong foundation, very important foundation. And then that helps us to gain deeper understanding. So it's about, that the mind becomes more peaceful, more grounded, more quiet, deeper. And then through that you can look deeply into your own emotions, into your own mind, understand how they manifest. So it's about emotional intelligence, understanding, how our emotions manifest, and learning what are the difficult emotions that I have to deal with. So they are, quite universal. Basically, there are 5 big emotional problems that we have, We all have the same. But then, for each one of us, it's very specific the way it manifests. So the first one is confusion, ignorance. We don't know ourselves. That's the basis of all the others. Because of that, it creates greed and rejection, hatred. So because I don't know myself, I think I need more. I become greedy because I feel unfulfilled. So I think if I have this and I have that, and then I will feel better. So not knowing myself generates greed, and greed generates competition. Because I want to have more, I want you to have less, because I want to have more. Yeah. So sympathy, antipathy, greed and hatred, violence, fear, all that comes from that. This is the one fundamental axis. So ignorance, desire or greed, and then hatred, violence, so cruelty. And then the other big problem is I compare myself with others, which is the worst thing. One should never do that.
Would happen a lot nowadays.
I compare, not nowadays, since the beginning of time, people compare.
Without the smartphone already, we're comparing. Yeah.
So if I see somebody I'm comparing and I think I'm better than you, yeah, then I feel, this person is not important. I'm better. So I become proud.
Yeah.
If I feel, she's better than me, then I feel envious. She's much richer. I want to have what she has. I
cannot sleep until I have that.
So you see, so you have this other polarity is envy and pride, jealousy and pride. Yeah? And jealousy and pride comes from comparing. Yeah? And comparing is completely useless because no 2 human beings are the same. What do you want to compare between you and me? You have to accept me the way I am. I can accept you the way you are, and we can be friends. But what do you want to compare? She's so lucky she has long hair. My hair is so short. I'm so sad. Or, or whatever. She's young. I'm old. Or I'm so intelligent, much more intelligent than you. It's useless. It's nonsense. So we need to let go of comparing. Letting go of comparing ourselves with others. Because then we can create relationships that are not based on desire, not based on jealousy, not based on pride, not based on hatred, but just on, we are both humans. You have your suffering, I have my suffering. We can support each other. We can be friends. We can love each other. We can do something together. And there's nothing to compare. So that's really the second step, is creating this quality of relationship that is free of comparing ourselves with others. Yeah. And then we have to extend that to other life forms. Open our hearts, not only to people, but to animals and to plants and to our planet.
It's beautiful pictures when we are living like our full human potentials in the way that's not only helping us to grow fully, but also in harmony with the rest. When in conversation with Thầy, it seems that our daily concerns about problems are only because we're looking outward. It seems like when we look outward into the situation we are facing, the problems become big and we become small. And we don't even be fully in charge of the problems or the issues that we are facing. It's almost like because we look in so much outwardly, the problems become the mountain and we become an onlooker. And because of that, we don't actually take step or engage or even change the way that we interact with it so that the situation will change itself. One thing that I feel that we're very lucky to have Thầy in our conversation is that I know that many people, many organizations in the world, they also come and ask Thầy for your wisdom about the future. It's not just the wisdom of looking backward and learn from what Thầy have experienced, but also looking forward into the future, and especially the future of the 21st century, where so many things have happened in just the past few years and not even decades. Maybe just to bring home a few key things that Thầy want to send to the audience, especially the people living in Vietnam nowadays. Maybe 3 things that Thầy think would help them to go forward into the future with a more sense of balance, harmony, and happiness within themselves.
Well, I think I've already shared quite a lot in this direction, but I think the very important thing is to realize that the future is not simply, doesn't have simply to be the continuation of the past.
The future doesn't have to be
no,
the continuation.
No, it doesn't have to be the continuation. We can change it.
And we also can drop.
We can change it if we become aware of the present moment. Because the future doesn't really exist. The future is a manifestation of the seeds that we are planting now. In the same way that, if you're a farmer, you want to have fruits next year, then this year you will plant seeds that will manifest as fruits next year. And if you don't plant the right seeds, you are sure you will not get the right fruit. So you have to be very attentive, if you're a farmer, what are the seeds that you are planting so that the flowers or the fruits that you want to have next year will be the one you want to have. It's the same with our lives. What are the seeds that we are planting today in our consciousness? Because our consciousness is like a field. So what are the seeds that we are planting today so that tomorrow they will manifest as our life? You see, so today they are just seeds. They are just like intentions, they are emotions, they are thoughts. But if we cultivate certain seeds, then we will have certain fruits. So if I cultivate jealousy and pride and greed, sure enough, your life will be full of suffering tomorrow. If you cultivate compassion and friendship and warmth and gratitude and kindness, your life tomorrow will be a beautiful life. So the future is yours to create. Of course, you're not alone because we have a collective consciousness. This is why I'm saying we should not do it alone. We should do it together. But the reality in which we live is nothing else than the manifestation of collective consciousness. Therefore, that's why education is so important. The seeds that we plant today in the heart and the mind of the children is the society that we will have tomorrow. This is why our effort is very much focusing on education, because that's the way to prepare the future. From the quality of the seeds that we're planting in the hearts and the mind of today's children, that this is what tomorrow's society will look like. And it's a very important responsibility.
So Thầy message is about us looking into the future with already starting today, planting the seeds into our own consciousness, and especially doing that for our younger generation in education.
Exactly. The future, the best way to take care of the future is to take care of the present moment. You cannot take care of the future. You have to take care of the present moment.
And if you're suffering right now, that's where it starts.
Exactly.
You say it's a platform, it's a soil. Yes. Yeah, for us to grow our happiness from suffering. Other projects in Vietnam that Thầy are doing with the team and your community, could Thầy share with us?
We have two main fields in which we're working. One is the field of education and one is the field of transforming organizations. And both are based on the idea of gross national happiness that is Bhutan's philosophy of development, trying to put happiness and well-being in the center rather than just economic growth. And so we have the program called Happy Schools that we have piloted in Hue in 9 schools. Now we are wrapping up this pilot project, and now we will start in Hanoi also. And at the same time, we are creating an online platform so that many, many teachers can access it. And it's really based on what I shared today about living in harmony with oneself, living in harmony with others, living in harmony with society, with nature and with the planet. This is the foundation of happy schools. And so what we are teaching teachers is how to implement that in the classroom so that teachers and parents realize the most important task that we have is to prepare our children to be happy human beings. It's not to prepare them to become doctors or lawyers or engineers or whatever. Okay, it's fine to be doctor, lawyer, engineer, but more important to be a happy person. So you might be happy as an engineer, or you might be very unhappy as an engineer. So being an engineer is no guarantee for being happy, right? So, and in order to help students, children to become happy people, really unfold their full potential, we have to understand the needs of the children. And their needs are really, children need emotional security. Children need to be accompanied in their process of developing. And so the tools that we have been speaking about today are the tools that are really helpful for education in order to plant those good seeds that will make them happy people, which in turn will create a happy society. That's the one field. So happy schools. Then we have this community in Hue, the Peaceful Bamboo Family, TTG, where we are sort of showcasing that it's possible to do it. It's not just a dream. And so, when people come and visit our community, they experience it. Oh, it's possible, And for us, agriculture is very important. Biodynamic agriculture, healthy agriculture, because that's a way to take care of the earth. And that's the way to feed people healthy food. So that's another very strong concern, to spread the idea of healthy agriculture, healthy food. And then the other one is helping organizations like businesses or NGOs. And we have been working with BITIS for the past 3 years, helping and bringing happiness in their business. And so you might at one point have a podcast with Cindy, the CEO of BITIS. She can tell you more about that. So we really want also to encourage businesses, because most of us work in businesses. So if businesses are happy places, then a lot of people will become happier. And it is possible. We have done it here and in many countries. So really, cultivating these qualities that we've been speaking about today also in the business world, I think is very, very important.
And is there a way that people out there can have access of Thầy and the team are doing?
So we have an organization called Eurasia Learning Institute for Happiness and Wellbeing, ELI. We have a website, not yet in Vietnamese, but it's in English. And so people can look up. Then I wrote a book that has been translated in Vietnamese. People can read. So many of the things I've been discussing today are there, also with many practical advices. And I think then it's up to people to really create network and communities that want to cultivate these things together. And if a network arises, then we can always try to support them.
So we can also look forward to many, many more interactions and opportunities to meet with Thầy again in the future.
Hopefully.
So one thing that I'm really curious to ask also for the topic of this podcast series called On Balance. What is balance according to your definition or experience, Thầy?
So for me, balance is very similar to the word harmony. So it's, one of the big problems of our society is that we think the more the better. So we tend to try to have the more the better. And I think that's a mistake. The real question is, how much is enough? So what is the right measure? What is the right balance between the different fields in my life? For instance, if I put too much emphasis on, let's say, becoming rich, what am I losing by doing that? Is it relationship? Is it time for myself? Is it time in nature? Whatever. So in all the different fields of my life, what is the right balance? Balance is balance between inner needs and social responsibility. So if I only want to cultivate myself, it's not enough. We should feel responsible for society and for the planet. But if I'm only trying to solve problems out there, forgetting myself, I will never be able to do it. So the other balance is the right balance between inner and outer. Yeah? And this has to do with rhythm. So the fundamental balance in the human being is the balance between the heartbeat and the breathing. In my own body, there's a balance between my heartbeat and in my breathing. There's a harmony. This is why to start meditation on breathing is very helpful, because breathing is rhythm. Rhythm is harmony. If my breathing is in harmony, my health will be in harmony, my body will be in harmony, my emotions will be in harmony. So balance is about harmony.
Balance is about harmony, and the way that Thầy expresses to the rhythm of Thei's life, also the expression of how Thei feel with the heartbeats and the breathing that Thei use this hand like this is also make me feel like if we can actually having this harmony already in our breathing, maybe on the rest of the very big issues that we are facing in our daily life will step by step be unfolded and falling into the directions that our consciousness is also guiding us. Today we have received so many wisdom and sharing from Thầy, and I really feel deeply, deeply grateful. And I think a lot of things is still processing in my head right now. But one thing for sure is what has been inspired to me a lot today is happiness is also a skill and an action that we intentionally take with full responsibility to really make it happen in our life. And the way that we can make it happen in our life cannot be without the people living together with us and also in the whole world on our planet. So thank you so much for all the beautiful sharing.
Thank you.
I really wish you a lot of health and with all the energy that you are still having and sharing with us. Really hope to see you again so many more times in the future, Thầy. Deep gratitude to Thei's time. Yeah. So what is happiness for you? Have you taken away, after today's conversation with Dr. Thọ, a definition for your own? Or maybe an aspiration to take action into realizing what has always been your dream, what has always been your belief into living in this world? I hope today's conversation with Dr. Thọ will shine the light on your thinking about living in harmony with yourself, with others, and with nature. And I really love the parts when Dr. Thọ talks about Mother Nature, that we only have this one mother. And because of that, we're brothers and sisters. And because of that, we can work together to create a future that we all want to live in. In order to do that, we need first to educate ourselves, to overcome our own sufferings, to become true with our values, and to live with what we believe, and create a community around that. And thank you so much for having listened to our podcast today. If you enjoyed what you hear, please click like, share, or subscribe to With Success on YouTube or other podcast platforms. Podcast on Balance will be aired at 8 p.m. on Tuesday every 2 weeks on With Success. Stay tuned and hope to see you again soon.